Over the last few years, Coldplay has quietly become one of the biggest bands in the world. But you knew that, didn't you? Almost 20 million albums sold. Just about every concert is a sellout. The singer became a free trade activist, married a movie star, and had a daughter named Apple. But then again, you knew that too, didn't you? In fact, Coldplay has become so huge that there's probably very little that we don't know. Well, hang on, back up. Why is the kid named Apple? I mean, that's a little weird, right? There has to be an explanation. And here's another question. What's the connection between Coldplay and the way we set our clocks twice a year? That may sound like a dumb question, but there really is an answer. And how is it that some people insist that the X and Y album cost Coldplay's record company $615 million? Yeah, you heard me right. $615 million. That makes that missing Guns N' Roses album look like pocket change. The answers to those questions and more coming up as we go through 10 things you probably didn't know about Coldplay.
Now, the ongoing history of new music.
So I look in your direction, but you pay me no attention, do you? I know you don't listen to me, 'cause you say you see straight through me, don't you? But on and on, from the moment I wake to the moment I sleep, I'll be there by your side. Just you try and stop me, I'll be waiting in line just to see if you can. Oh, did you want me to change? Well, I changed for good, and I want you to know that you'll always get your way. And I wanted to say, don't you shiver? You shiver. Sing it out. I'll always be waiting for you, so you know how much I need you, but you never even see me, do you? And is this my final chance of getting you? But on and on, from the moment I wake to the moment I sleep, I'll be there by your side. Just you try and stop me, I'll be waiting in line just to see if you can. So I look in your direction, but you pay me no attention. And you know how much I need you, but you never even see me.
Coldplay and Shiver from the first album, Parachutes, from July of 2000. Welcome again, I'm Alan Cross, and we're going to call this program 10 Things You Probably Didn't Know About Coldplay. And I say probably because, well, maybe you're one of the super hardcore fans who knows everything there is to know about the band. They just happen to be one of those groups that somehow encourages slavish devotion and study amongst a significant number of people across the world. I mean, just do a quick Google search and you'll see what I mean. You type in Coldplay, and it takes all of 3/100ths of a second to return 9,400,000 results. You know, the last time I did a show on Coldplay, I did the same thing and came up with just 746,000 hits. Now, naturally, no one can profess to know what information is contained in all 6.4 million hits, but we're going to try. And let's start by answering a few of the more basic questions, in no particular order. Question 1. Where did the name Coldplay come from? Well, certainly not from anyone in the group. As Chris Martin was growing up, he played in bands with names like the Rockin' Honkies and the Red Rooster Boogie Band, and even a synthesizer-based group called Identity Crisis, who sounded a lot like the Pet Shop Boys, apparently. He was always trying to be the frontman, and one of the things he tried was dressing in a raincoat and singing like Bono. That was the time he was booed off stage. Drummer Will Champion's pre-Coldplay group was called Fat Hamster, while bass player Guy Berryman had a band called Time Out. And guitarist Johnny Buckland's claim to fame was a rap group he formed when he was 10 years old. When Chris and John first got together, they thought about cashing in on the boy band craze, and they even had a name. They were going to call themselves Pectorals. When all 4 members finally hooked up at University College London, they started gigging under the name Starfish and then Stepney Green. Okay, fine, but when did Coldplay start getting used? Well, the band borrowed it from another friend, a student named Tim, who had been using it for his group but had become tired of it because, well, he found it so depressing. Tim had taken it from a book of poems entitled Child's Reflections, Coldplay, by a former ski bum dude from L.A. named Philip Horky. That was his name, Philip Horky. The last poem in the book is entitled Coldplay, which is spelled out in 2 words. Good luck in finding a copy, too, because despite the success of Coldplay the band, Horky's book is Coldplay question number 2. Is there a deeper, more literal meaning to the song Clocks? The answer seems to be maybe. I'll tell you the story and you can draw your own conclusions. Anybody know who William Willett was? Well, he was a builder from Kent in the UK who liked to go to work early. He was a keener. He was most annoyed that for almost half the summer the sun came up while everybody was still sleeping. He thought that was a real big waste. So in 1907, having seen too much daylight slip by, he came up with a plan. In order to improve productivity, and not to mention shine a little more light on the gloomy citizens of Great Britain, Mr. Willett started circulating a pamphlet amongst the members of Parliament. He also went to local councils and other businessmen. His idea was to advance the country's clocks by 20 minutes on 4 consecutive Sundays in April. In September, the reverse would happen. The clocks would fall back 20 minutes on the weekends. This would not only give people a chance to get to work earlier, but it would also allow for more time in the sunshine in the evening. See, you would move the usable light from the morning to the evening. He even backed it up with some numbers. The extra daylight would save the country £2.5 million. However, try as he might, everybody laughed at William. Mess with the clocks by 80 minutes in either direction? What a dumb idea. Now, he did succeed in getting a bill before Parliament in 1909, but it was ridiculed and laughed out of the House. And when William died in 1915, his dream of more sunshine was, sadly, unrealized. However, by this time, World War I had broken out, which was becoming a dangerous drain on the British economy. So that's why in April 1916, about a year after he died, William's concept of daylight savings time was reintroduced as a cost-saving measure, and the bill passed. Within the week, most of Europe came on board, including the people the British were fighting against. See, the extra daylight came in handy when killing people. But when the war ended, most countries went back to normal. Things weren't really settled until 1972, when the UK officially went on Universal GMT time in the winter and British Standard Time, their daylight savings time, in the summer. William Willett finally had his way. A little late, but his idea was accepted just the same. And now much of the world, except places like Saskatchewan, have now adopted the principles of daylight savings time. Nice story. So what does this have to do with Coldplay? Well, William Willett, the inventor of daylight savings time, was Chris Martin's great-great-grandfather.
This is for Sue McGinn, the mother of the best rodeo around. Lights go out and I can be saved. Tides that I tried to swim against have brought me down upon my knees. Oh, and I beg and plead, singing, come out of things unsaid. Shoot an apple off my head with a trouble that can't be named. A tiger's waiting to be tamed, singing. Stop that she now knows, so I come out upon my seas. Curse me, stop what she tease. I'm another cure, or am I part of the disease? Singing. went home, home, where I wanted to go. I went home, home, I wanted to go. People told us to cancel the show, but how could they know that the one place that we love to go is to play in Toronto?
All right, on to Coldplay question number 3. Why the hell did Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow name their daughter Apple? I mean, how many people do you know with a first name like that? Well, if you're Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow, you know at least 3. There's their daughter, the daughter of Coldplay's booking agent, a guy by the name of Marty Diamond, and the daughter of director Peter Farrelly, the guy behind the camera for Gwyneth's 2001 movie with Jack Black called Shallow Hal. Now, Marty says it's all a coincidence and that there is no connection between the name of his daughter and little Apple Blythe Allison Martin. However, sources say that this is a load. Chris and Gwyneth asked Marty if it was all right for them to have an Apple too. They apparently just think it's a very cool name. Which brings us to fact number 4, the nappies. What does the British term for diapers have to do with Coldplay? I shall explain. When Apple was born in May 2004, fans left presents outside the Martin home, including baskets of apples. Meanwhile, Dad and the boys decided to offer their own gift and to have a little fun by forming a one-song-only band that they called the Nappies. Chris says this was inspired by Jay-Z with a little Kraftwerk thrown in. And the guy doing the introduction? Legendary Beatles producer George Martin.
Hello. I would like to introduce you to a great new band. I wish I could say that I produced them myself, but I can honestly say that I've never heard anything quite like it. I hope you enjoy it. The Nappies.
Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're frown with your hormones bouncing up and down. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad. It's a weird 9 months that you have had. There's shit going down that you can't disguise, and your boob's gone got 10 times the size. The cup's going up from an A to D. That's bad for you, but it's fun for me. Now just 'cause a little bit of rumpy pump, now you're walking around with a great big bump. You might think if you were French and you should have said no, or at least you would have maybe put a condom on. Think you might find that it's really fun. I know there's no use unless you make a bun. There's something to learn, yeah, it really is. Now you know what that sticky stuff is. I'll be there with you, baby, through the thin and the thick. I'm gonna clean up all the poo and the sick. I'll be there to make you happy and keep everything clean. I'll change your nappy to the washing machine. 'Cause I ain't no baddie, I ain't no baddie, I ain't no baddie, I am your baby's daddy. Sometimes you think, what a fool I am, and why did I marry this awful man? Now a baby's part of my family plan, and can it kick me? Yes, it can. My name's Ken, and I've got 3. Do you like being a dad? Yeah, definitely. But I have to warn you that although it's fun, there'll be times when you wish that you'd been a nut. I'll be there with you, baby, through the thin and the thick. I'm gonna clean up all the poo and the sick. Yeah, I'll be there to make you happy, and I'll bring in the bread, or I'll be the nanny. You can go out instead, and I know that you'll be grumpy. That's what everyone says, and you're not gonna hump it for 42 days. If you don't want more babies, then you cannot disguise it, and I'll take my arm and I'll vasectomize it. 'Cause I ain't no baddie, I ain't no baddie, I ain't no baddie. Sometimes I make you sad. I ain't no baddie, I ain't no baddie, I ain't no baddie, I am your baby's daddy. I am your baby's daddy. Oh, break it down. She told me to crawl this way, all this way. She told me to crawl this way, all this way. She told me to crawl this way, all this way. She told me to crawl this way, all this way.
Coldplay performing as the Nappies. And yes, there's a video for that too. It's ridiculous. And one other note about babies. When Apple could only gurgle, Chris used her voice on his answering machine at home. It was, apparently cute. Back with items 5, 6, and 7 as we continue with 10 things you probably didn't know about Coldplay. Coming up next.
You're tuned to the ongoing history of new music. This is the ongoing history of new music.
Welcome back to the show called 10 Things You Probably Didn't Know About Coldplay. If you're a hardcore fan, you're excused because you probably do know most of this stuff. But if you're just one of the regular fans who wants to get a little crazier, then maybe this will help you get on the road to being that fanatical. We're up to item number 5, which has to do with artwork. What do we see on the cover of the X and Y album? It sort of looks like a super low resolution of a badly played game of Tetris. So what is it all about? This requires another history lesson. In 1874, a Frenchman by the name of Émile Baudot came up with a code for sending telegraph data. If you know anything about computer programming, Baudot code is sort of like, well, it's almost like the great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of ASCII programming, if that makes any sense to you. If this helps, it's a 5-bit binary code, which allowed for all the letters of the alphabet plus the numbers 1 through 9. You got that? Telegraph operators loved it because once you got good, you could send messages very, very quickly. It's kind of like predictive text when you're text messaging somebody. Baudot code was used quite a bit for decades, while telegraphs were still useful. Now, we don't use a lot of Baudot code today. Some ham radio operators still like it, and there are apparently some applications when it comes to those TDD phones deaf people use. Okay, now let's look at the cover of X and Y. Do not be fooled by the colors of the blocks. The colors mean nothing. That's just aesthetics. And the blocks themselves are just graphical representations of the numbers used to make up the 32 characters in Baudot code. If there's a block filling a space, then it's a 1. If there's no block, then it's a 0. Using binary translation and applying it to Baudot code, the gray and black blocks at the top of the figure represent the letter X. The bottom set of blocks represent the letter Y. And if you look on the back and translate those blocks, you get the message, "Make trade fair," which relates to Chris Martin's economic activism. I'm sure if he were still alive, Monsieur Baudot would be very flattered that these Englishmen and their fans have gone through so much trouble to decode what should have been a fairly obvious message. Those blocks in the front of X and Y mean X and Y. So now we know.
How long before I get in? Before it starts, before I begin? How long before you decide? Or before I know what it feels like? Where to? Where do I go? If you never try, then you'll never know. sign that I couldn't read, or a light that I couldn't see. Some things you have to believe, but others are puzzles puzzling me. All that noise and all that sound, all those places I have found, and birds go flying at the speed of sound to show you how it all began. Birds came flying from the underground. If you could see it, then you'd understand. Oh, when you see it, then you'll understand. All those signs, I knew what they meant. Some things you can invent. Some get made and some get sent. And birds go flying at the speed of sound to show you how it all began. Birds came flying from the underground. If you could see it, then you'd understand. Oh, when you see it, then you'll understand.
Now that we've decoded the cover of the X and Y album, let's look at Chris Martin's hands. This is Coldplay item number 6. It looks like he has some black rectangles tattooed there. And sometimes he wears colored tape around his fingers. Anybody want to take a crack at that? Well, first of all, those aren't just rectangles on his left hand. They should be read together to form an equals sign. This is his personal code for make trade fair. Equals fair, right? This is a little easier than what he used to do, which was to write www.maketradefair.com on his hand with a pen. It was a little hard to read, especially when things got sweaty under stage lights. You know, a lot of smearing and stuff. The equal sign has drawn much more attention and has actually turned out to be a very clever way of marketing Chris's economic activism. Oh, and the colored tape. Well, refer to the above section on Bordeaux code. The colors represent the X and Y album. Well, the placement on his fingers can't necessarily be decoded into anything. You can try, but I don't think there's anything there.
Oh, brother, I can't get through. I've been trying hard to reach you, 'cause I don't know what to do. Oh, brother, I can't believe it's true. I'm so scared about the future, and I wanna talk to you. Oh, I wanna talk to you. You could take a picture of something you see. In the future, where will I be? You could climb a ladder up to the sun.
more Coldplay and Talk from the X and Y album. And if the guitar riff sounds familiar, it's because it was lovingly and respectfully ripped off from an old Kraftwerk song called Computer Love. To wit, Coldplay, Kraftwerk. Coldplay, Kraftwerk. We'll call that little bit of information little-known Coldplay fact number 7. Items 8 through 10 coming up next.
You're tuned to the ongoing history of new music. This is the ongoing history of new music.
Welcome back to a show called 10 Things You Probably Didn't Know About Coldplay. And again, I'm hedging things a bit because if you are a big fan, then maybe you do know this stuff. But if you were just to ask most people about these things, chances are they just give you a blank stare because they have no clue. Item number 8 has to do with zombies. The undead. Chris Martin and Johnny Buckland are quite the fans of the living dead who have a taste for brains, and I can actually prove it. One of Chris Martin's friends is a British comedian and actor named Simon Pegg. Chris and Simon spend an awful lot of time talking about their Star Wars obsession, which is made even cooler by the fact that Simon's old roommate was the dude who provided the voice for Darth Maul in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And whenever they get together, there's a very good chance that Chris and Simon will pull out the lightsabers and duel. I'm not kidding about that. They are kind of nerdy. In 2004, Simon was offered the lead role in a movie called Shaun of the Dead, which is a very funny send-up of the whole zombie genre. When he told Chris about this, Chris thought it would be pretty cool if he could be in the movie too. Now, if you've seen the movie, and if you haven't, you should because it's really funny, Chris appears as himself in a news report right near the end where he's promoting a charity called Zomb Aid. Do-gooder. But did you see what happened to Chris afterwards? It's not pretty. After Sean and his girlfriend escaped from the basement of the Winchester pub, watch for Zombie Chris to walk past the phone booth from right to left. Johnny's in there somewhere. Right? I can't remember where, though, but he's there. I do know this. If the rumors are true, both Chris and Johnny were paid for their appearances in Shaun of the Dead. And the standard daily fee for anyone playing a zombie in that movie was £1 per day. So that would make Chris Martin and Johnny Buckland professional musicians and professional zombies, too.
Look at the stars, look how they shine for you, and everything you do. Yeah, they were all yellow. I came along, I wrote a song for you, and all the things you do. Was called yellow. So then I took my turn. Oh, what a thing to have done. And it was all yellow. Your skin, oh yeah, your skin. Turn into something beautiful. And you know I love you so. You know I love you so. Swam across, I jumped across for you. Oh, what a thing. 'cause you were all yellow. I drew a line for you. Oh, what a thing to do. And it was all yellow. Your skin, oh yeah, your skin and bones turn into something beautiful. And you know, for you I bleed myself dry. For you I bleed myself dry. It's true. Look how they shine for you. 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 Look how they shine. Look at the stars. Look how they shine for you. And all the things that you do.
Item number 9 on our list of 10 things you probably didn't know about Coldplay has to do with some financial numbers. Coldplay is one of the most important assets of their record company, which is EMI, the major multinational headquartered in the UK. I mean, anytime you sell 20 million albums, you become a pretty important part of any company's profit and loss statement. EMI is also one of the smaller major labels, which means they were hurt more than most by things like illegal downloading and piracy and the downturn in sales of CDs. The company also had made some dodgy decisions involving certain artists, hello Mariah Carey, which exacerbated their financial condition. In other words, EMI needed a hit record, and a very, very big one, very, very quickly. And as Coldplay started to work on their third album, the hopes and pressures began to increase. Now, Coldplay doesn't necessarily work well under pressure. They became so frustrated that they scrapped an entire year's worth of songs because they felt that they just weren't good enough. Then EMI offered them a very large cash bonus if they could just get the album done by a certain date. But they missed the date and they didn't get the bonus. So that forced EMI to issue a statement to shareholders declaring that the new Coldplay album would not be ready in time for the first quarter of 2005 as first forecast. It was what they call a profit warning. And this last announcement did not sit well with the stock markets. Some analysts will tell you that Coldplay's issues with X and Y impacted the market value of EMI to the tune of $615 million US. That's how much the net worth of EMI evaporated in the spring of 2005. $615 million. Bye-bye. That is what you call an expensive album. And it's a good thing that X and Y was well received and has sold well. In fact, it's conceivable that Coldplay saved EMI, the original home of the Beatles, from a merger and or extinction. No pressure, right?
When you try your best but you don't succeed, when you get what you want but not what you need, when you feel so tired but you can't sleep, stuck in reverse, and the tears come streaming down your face, when you lose something you can't replace, when you love someone but it goes to waste, could it be worse? Lights will guide you try to fix you. I'm high up above or down below. When you're too in love to let it go. But if you never try, you'll never know just what you were. Lights will guide you home and ignite your bones. I will try to fix you. See a stream down your face when you lose something you cannot replace. See a stream down your face see a stream down your face. I promise you I will learn from your mistakes. See a stream down your face lights will guide you home and ignite your bones, and I will try to fix you.
Coldplay, a band that put their record label in dire financial straits and then rescues the entire company with the release of X and Y. The final of our 10 items about Coldplay, coming up in just seconds.
You're tuned to the ongoing history of new music. This is the ongoing history of new music.
Over the last hour, we've gone through 9 things that most people probably didn't know about Coldplay. So let's do one more, and we have an even 10. There are significant connections between Coldplay and Canada. In fact, it's quite possible that Coldplay wouldn't be what they are today had it not been for their Canadian connection. First of all, Coldplay was signed to a Vancouver-based management company called Network when they broke through with a rush of blood to the head. So that's right, at least part of Coldplay's career advice and management came from here in Canada. In fact, Coldplay's longtime head manager is a dude named Dave Holmes. Dave Holmes was born in Ottawa. And finally, drummer Will Champion is buds with Canadian NBA superstar Steve Nash. Don't know why, don't know how, just thought you'd like to know. Technical production is by Rob Johnston. See you next time. I'm Alan Cross.
You've been listening to The Ongoing History of New Music, a Deep Sky production.